Anna crawled into the cave smiling, unaware that she had just made the last decision of her life. The words would later haunt her companions, echoing in their memories like the hollow darkness of Nutty Putty Cave itself. Anna was 23 years old, a student who balanced her engineering classes with a love for climbing, hiking, and exploring places most people would never dare to enter. She was bright, lively, and carried the stubborn confidence of youth, the belief that the earth could bend to her will if she only pushed hard enough. That afternoon in Utah, she joined a small group of fellow adventurers. Their destination was infamous, Nutty Putty Cave, a place that carried both fascination and warning among local spelunkers. The cave had been mapped before, its passages notorious for tight squeezes and unpredictable shifts. To some, that was the challenge, an underground labyrinth that seemed to test not only skill but courage itself. To others, it was a trap waiting to claim the overconfident. Anna fell into the first category. When she first heard of the cave, she told her friends, "If it's that bad, I want to see it with my own eyes." Nutty Putty had already earned a reputation long before that day. Years earlier, rescuers had been forced to extract trapped explorers who underestimated its tight restrictions. The cave was eventually shut down, but pressure from the local community led to limited reopenings under strict conditions. Still, danger lingered like a shadow over its narrow arteries of stone. The entrance itself looked harmless, a small opening in the ground, leading downward into Earth's hidden body. But inside lay the birth canal, the scout trap, and the infamous passages where the stone narrowed until it pressed against human skin like a vice. These were not simply tunnels, they were tests of survival. On that day, Anna stood at the entrance with her helmet lamp casting a thin beam into the void. She laughed lightly, brushing off nervous comments from her companions. "We'll be fine," she said, adjusting her gloves. None of them could imagine that hours later, she would be lying inverted, unable to breathe, her life draining away with every second. In the cold air, the group's banter carried a nervous edge. A friend muttered, "This cave eats people." Anna grinned and answered, "Then let's see if it has the stomach for me." Her words were bold, but her voice trembled just slightly. Only those closest to her caught it, and so the group descended, crawling into the narrow, damp earth. What began as a shared adventure would soon fracture into panic, desperation, and tragedy. The first meters were easy, but no one knew that just a little deeper, one simple choice would change everything. The entrance to Nutty Putty Cave was nothing more than a slit in the ground, a patch of earth that could easily be overlooked if you didn't know where to search. To outsiders, it appeared unimpressive, just another scar in the Utah desert. But to Anna and her companions, it was a gateway, a passage into the earth's hidden lungs. They lowered themselves in slowly, one by one, boots scraping against damp stone, helmets knocking lightly as they squeezed into the dark. The air changed instantly. Above ground, the desert was dry and open. Below, the air grew heavy with moisture, carrying the faint scent of mud and minerals. Each breath tasted of stone dust, thick and metallic on the tongue. Their headlamps cut into the blackness, beams catching tiny droplets of water that sparkled like dust suspended in nothingness. Every sound amplified, the shuffle of knees on grit, the scrape of gloves against rock, even the shallow breathing that grew louder in confined space. It was as though the cave swallowed their noise and fed it back in eerie echoes. At the start, the group was in high spirits. Anna joked about the gear they carried, helmets, knee pads, gloves, and small packs with snacks and water. "Feels like we're ready for war," she laughed, crawling forward on her elbows. Her friend Jason chuckled. "Against mud, yeah." Their voices bounced strangely, as if the walls themselves were listening. The first descent was manageable. The cave opened into a sloping passage known as the Big Slide, where gravity did much of the work. They slid carefully, their bodies brushing along the polished limestone, giggling nervously as the earth pulled them deeper. Still, the atmosphere was already shifting. The narrowness demanded awkward movements, contorted shoulders, bent spines, twisted hips. At one point, Anna had to exhale completely just to squeeze through a choke point barely wider than her chest. She laughed afterward, but her laughter was sharper than before, touched with adrenaline. As they pressed on, the light from the surface disappeared entirely. The only glow came from their lamps, floating in the dark like fragile stars. Jason muttered. "Feels like we're not supposed to be here." Anna turned her head and grinned, her teeth flashing white in the artificial light. "That's what makes it fun," she said. Yet beneath the humor, there was a quiet awareness. The cave wasn't just rock. It was alive in its own way, breathing with drafts of cold air, dripping water from unseen cracks, groaning faintly as stone settled. The walls seemed to close in the deeper they went, pressing against skin and nerves alike. For the moment, though, the group kept moving forward, crawling, sliding, and laughing to mask their unease. They had only begun their descent, and already the cave was whispering warnings. But Anna didn't hear them. Not yet. The deeper they went, the more Nutty Putty Cave revealed its character. The big slide opened into a chamber where they could briefly stretch their arms and legs. It wasn't spacious by any normal standard, but compared to the suffocating entrance, it felt like a relief. The walls glistened with condensation, rough to the touch, coated with a thin film of mud that stuck to their gloves. Anna paused, shining her lamp upward. Tiny mineral formations clung to the ceiling like teeth. She brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, already damp with sweat. "Feels like the cave is sweating with us," she whispered, half amused, half uneasy. The temperature was cooler than the desert above, hovering around the mid-50s. A constant chill seeped through their clothing, mixing with body heat, leaving their skin clammy. The smell of wet limestone and stagnant air filled every breath. It was the kind of place where silence felt heavy, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing from somewhere unseen. The group lingered for a moment, taking small sips from their bottles. Jason tried to lighten the mood. "Imagine living down here. No windows, no sun." His words hung in the damp air until Anna replied, "Some things aren't meant to be lived in, just survived." They moved on, following the twisting path deeper. The first challenges came quickly. Some passages required belly crawling, arms pinned close, helmets scraping against stone. At times they had to wriggle sideways, their backs grinding against the rock while their knees pushed forward inch by inch. Mud caked their clothes and gloves, leaving streaks on the stone where they struggled through. Despite the discomfort, there was laughter. One of the younger explorers slipped in the mud and cursed, drawing a burst of chuckles that relieved the tension for a moment. Anna's voice carried a playful edge, but beneath it was a spark of determination. She wanted to prove herself, to master the cave that had humbled so many before her. Still, the balance was fragile. Every sound, every movement carried an undertone of warning. Stones shifted beneath their weight. Narrow spaces forced their bodies into positions that felt unnatural. Bones pressed against rock as though the cave were testing them. The first hints of unease crept in when the passages narrowed further. At one point, Jason muttered, "This is tighter than I thought." Anna, ahead of him, paused. Her lamp illuminated a corridor so thin it looked more like a crack than a tunnel. She smiled faintly, her voice steady but low. "That's why we came, right?" They pressed forward, but the laughter grew quieter. Confidence gave way to cautious breaths. For every thrill they felt, there was an echo of danger lurking just beyond the beam of their lamps. And as they inched further, the cave tightened its grip, drawing them closer to the moment when confidence would turn into terror. The air grew heavier as the group reached one of Nutty Putty's most infamous features, the birth canal. The name alone was enough to unsettle newcomers. It was a passage so narrow that only one body at a time could pass, forcing each explorer into a crawl that pressed bone against limestone, leaving no room to turn back once committed. Anna crouched at the entrance, her headlamp beam bouncing along the thin slit of stone ahead. "Looks tighter than I imagined," she admitted, her voice carrying a tremor that could have been excitement or fear. Jason exhaled sharply. "If you get stuck in there, don't expect me to carry you out." The joke fell flat, swallowed by the silence of the cave. The birth canal had warnings etched into its very shape. The rock narrowed gradually, drawing explorers deeper before they realized how little space remained. At points, the floor rose just as the ceiling dipped, creating a stone vise around the chest. Many who entered felt the panic of their lungs straining against immovable walls. It wasn't a place for hesitation. Anna hesitated anyway. She knelt, brushed mud from her gloves, and peered forward into the gap. Her lamp revealed smooth limestone polished by years of desperate crawls. She bit her lip, then looked back at her friends. If people have done it before, I can do it too. The determination in her tone carried a hint of recklessness. The others shifted uneasily. One friend whispered, "Maybe we should stick to the bigger chambers. No shame in that." But Anna shook her head. "I didn't come all this way to stop at the entrance." With that, she lay flat on her stomach and pushed forward, shoulders scraping as she entered the squeeze. Almost immediately, her breathing grew louder. The stone pressed against her chest, each inhale shallow, each exhale sharp. Mud smeared across her helmet as she inched forward, arms pinned at awkward angles. Behind her, Jason muttered, "Take it slow. Don't rush." Inside, the silence pressed against her as firmly as the stone. Her lamp beam caught motes of dust, floating in the stagnant air. She tried to keep her breathing steady, but her chest had little room to expand. A flicker of unease stirred, but she pushed it down. "I'm fine," she called back, though the words came strained, broken. The group exchanged nervous glances. The cave was no longer playful. It was a predator, watching, waiting. Anna continued to push forward, the stone tightening around her with every inch. What had begun as a challenge was shifting into something else entirely. Each movement cost more breath. Each breath felt thinner. Jason's voice echoed softly behind her. "Don't force it, Anna." But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The rock was closing in, and the cave was about to show her how quickly confidence could become desperation. Anna pressed forward, her helmet scraping stone, shoulders locked against the narrow walls. Then, suddenly, she stopped. The tunnel pinched tighter than she expected. Her chest squeezed so firmly that her next inhale came out shallow and strained. She tried to push again, but her hips caught. Her arms, trapped beneath her, had no leverage. "I can't move," she whispered. The words were almost inaudible, muffled by the limestone pressing against her ribs. Jason froze. "What do you mean you can't move? Back up a little." "I can't," Anna gasped. She tried to wriggle her legs, but the stone clamped her in place. Her breathing quickened, shallow puffs echoing back toward her friends. The sound was sharp, panicked. The group scrambled to react. Jason reached for her ankles, tugging gently. "Relax. Don't panic. We'll pull you back." He braced his boots against the mud and pulled harder. The rock didn't budge. Anna's body remained locked in the passage, her chest pinned so tightly that each breath sounded weaker than the last. Inside the stone coffin, Anna's vision blurred. Her headlamp flickered against the walls, throwing shadows that seemed to pulse with her frantic heartbeat. She felt the weight of the earth pressing down from every side, the crushing awareness that there was no space to turn, no space to expand, no space to escape. Her friends pulled again, this time with more force. The cave answered with silence. Anna groaned in pain. "Stop. Stop. It hurts." The words dissolved into shallow gasps. The narrow passage was merciless. It offered no grip for hands, no angle for leverage. Anna was wedged headfirst, inverted at a slight angle, her lungs fighting for air in the small space left. Each second became heavier, the stone tightening around her like a vice. Jason tried to keep calm. Okay, listen. Just stay still. Save your strength. We'll get you out." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Anna closed her eyes, chest shuddering against the rock. Her breath rasped louder now, uneven and desperate. "I don't want to die here," she whispered into the stone, her voice trembling. Her friends looked at one another, their fear mirrored in their eyes. Panic clawed at the edges of the chamber, but they forced themselves to act. They tried pushing, pulling, twisting. Nothing worked. The cave had claimed her body like a trap, and the more they fought, the tighter it seemed to hold. And in that suffocating silence, the first true wave of terror set in, not just for Anna, but for everyone who realized they were witnessing something far worse than an accident. Minutes dragged into an eternity. Each attempt to free Anna failed, leaving her body pressed tighter against the unforgiving rock. The group's voices, once filled with confidence, now shook with desperation. Jason's gloves slipped in the mud as he tried again to pull at her ankles. "It's not working," he muttered, his voice breaking. Anna's breathing grew ragged. Her chest barely expanded, each inhale a shallow gasp that echoed back through the narrow space. The angle of her body, head down, feet angled slightly upward, forced blood to rush toward her skull. Already she felt the pounding pressure in her temples. Her vision darkened at the edges. The cave seemed to conspire against them. Water dripped steadily from above, each drop a metronome counting down time they did not have. The air was damp, heavy, and growing colder by the minute. Their headlamps reflected against slick walls, shadows jerking with every frantic movement. Jason pressed his forehead against the rock, his voice low, trembling. "We need help. We can't do this alone." Another friend nodded, eyes wide with panic. They knew the truth. The cave had turned from playground to prison, and Anna was its captive. But leaving her to get help meant abandoning her in silence, trapped in the earth's grip. The thought gnawed at Jason's chest. "We'll be fast," he promised her, though his voice cracked with doubt. Inside the narrow passage, Anna tried to stay calm, but terror clawed at her throat. The weight of stone pressed her lungs into shallower gasps, and she whispered, "I can't breathe. Please." Her words trembled, echoing weakly, swallowed by mud and limestone. The group tried once more, pulling with every ounce of strength, but the cave didn't yield. Anna groaned in pain, her body jerking slightly, before going still again. Their hands slipped from her boots, leaving silence heavier than before. Guilt swept over them like the cold. Each of them knew they had encouraged this adventure, laughed when Anna volunteered for the tightest crawl. Now the laughter felt like betrayal. The cave grew darker as their lamps dimmed, batteries drained by hours underground. Shadows thickened, making every drip, every breath sound like a countdown. Jason clenched his fists, his knuckles white under the mud. "We're losing her," he whispered, and in that moment, the air itself seemed to thin. The cave was no longer just a setting. It was an executioner, indifferent, patient, tightening its hold with every passing second. Everything was worse now. The passage was too tight, their strength was failing, and Anna's breaths came softer, weaker, fading into the hum of stone. And all of them knew the nightmare was only just beginning. Jason scrambled back through the narrow crawl, his heart pounding louder than the echoes of his boots against the stone. Bursting into a slightly wider chamber, he shouted to the others, "We need rescuers, now!" The decision was made. Two of them would climb out to call for help, while Jason and another stayed with Anna, their voices trembling as they tried to keep her awake. Hours later, the first rescuers arrived. Local authorities, paramedics, and seasoned cavers squeezed into the cave with ropes, harnesses, pulleys, and buckets of equipment. Their helmets bumped against the walls as they crawled into the suffocating darkness, carrying the weight of urgency on their backs. When they reached Anna, the sight froze them. She was inverted, wedged headfirst into the narrow shaft, mud streaking her helmet, her breathing faint. One rescuer whispered, "Dear God," before forcing himself into motion. The first plan was simple: pull her free. They looped straps around her legs, anchoring ropes to stable rock, and heaved with all their strength. The passage resisted. The cave walls clamped tighter, and Anna cried out in pain, her voice breaking into sobs. "Stop! Please stop!" They tried again, softer this time, shifting their angles, adjusting the ropes. Nothing worked. The stone was immovable, its grip merciless. One rescuer muttered, "It's like she was poured into the rock." Next came improvisation. They slathered her body with lubricant, hoping to ease her out inch by inch. The mud soaked it instantly, turning slick surfaces into more grit. They hammered at nearby stone, trying to chip away space, but every strike sent vibrations through Anna's trapped body, her muffled cries echoing. The rescuers rotated in shifts, sweat dripping, arms trembling, their headlamps casting frantic beams across the limestone. Hours bled together. Every attempt failed. Every strategy collapsed against the cave's design. Exhaustion set in. Jason sat slumped against the wall, his face pale, voice hoarse. "We've been here all night," he whispered, staring at the rescuers who pushed themselves past breaking. The cave was winning. Above ground, more rescuers gathered. Radios crackled with updates, voices tense, hope thinning with every hour. A command tent was raised, maps of the cave spread across tables, strategies sketched and erased in frantic cycles. Underground, time stretched mercilessly. Anna's breathing weakened. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. Rescuers leaned close, straining to hear her murmur, "Please, I just want to go home." The air grew colder, the mud clung heavier, and though the cave had not crushed her body, it had already begun to crush the will of those who fought to save her. As the night dragged on into another endless hour, the rescuers faced the unthinkable truth. The longer Anna remained, the less chance she had to leave alive. And still, they pressed on, knowing the odds were slipping away. The hours stretched into a blur of mud, ropes, and desperate voices. Anna had been trapped for nearly a full day, her body inverted, her face pale beneath the flickering glow of her lamp. Blood continued to pool toward her head, swelling her features, pressing against her eyes. The rescuers knew that every minute stolen by the cave was another step toward death. Her breaths came in rattled gasps, shallow and irregular. "It hurts," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, just get me out." The rescuers swallowed their own fear, hiding it behind steady tones. "We're going to get you home, Anna. Just hold on." But their eyes told the truth. They were losing her. Another strategy was attempted. They rigged a complex pulley system, ropes snaking through carabiners hammered into the rock, teams of men straining together in perfect rhythm. The cave groaned with their effort, dust falling from the ceiling. For a brief, agonizing moment, Anna's body shifted. Cheers erupted, until her scream cut through the chamber. Her ribs pressed harder against the stone, and she begged them to stop. The rescuers froze, helpless. Every attempt hurt her more. Every movement tightened the cave's grip. It was as if the earth itself refused to surrender its hold. Inside her narrow tomb, Anna's world was collapsing. Her vision blurred into a tunnel of light and shadow. She heard voices muffled, as though from underwater. In the darkness, she muttered fragments, her mother's name, prayers, broken apologies. The rescuers leaned close, straining to hear every word, each one a reminder of the urgency. One rescuer pressed his hand against her ankle, whispering, "Stay with us, Anna. We're not leaving you." But her replies grew softer, thinner, as if the cave itself was swallowing her voice. Above ground, the sun rose and set again, the world continuing while deep below, a life hung by a thread. Families waited, praying, pacing at the entrance. News crews gathered, cameras capturing the grim faces of exhausted rescuers emerging for brief moments before diving back into the suffocating earth. Underground, silence thickened between attempts. Rescuers sat slumped against mud walls, their eyes hollow from fatigue. The cave smelled of sweat, stone, and despair. Every plan had failed. Every hope was thinner than the air they breathed. Anna's body trembled faintly, her voice now little more than a breath. "I'm so tired," she whispered, words carried by the stone like a dying ember. The rescuers looked at one another, tears glinting in their headlamps. No one wanted to say what they all knew. This was the final stage. With one last effort, ropes pulled, voices shouted, stone resisted, and then silence fell. The chamber was filled only with the sound of dripping water, steady and cold, as Anna's faint breath faded into nothingness. And in that crushing quiet, everyone knew. The fight was slipping beyond reach, and the cave was about to claim her forever. The chamber fell silent. Anna's breaths, once shallow gasps, were gone. The rescuers leaned close, calling her name, waiting for even the faintest response. Nothing came. In that moment, surrounded by stone and mud, the truth sank in. Nutty Putty Cave had taken her. They tried to revive her, desperate even against the impossible. Oxygen masks were pressed to her face, rescuers shouting commands, but the position of her body and the weight of the stone left no room for hope. Minutes slipped away, each one confirming what their hearts already knew. Anna was gone. Above ground, word traveled quickly. Radios crackled with updates, and the command tent grew heavy with silence. Her family, waiting anxiously near the entrance, was told the news in hushed, broken voices. Tears and sobs filled the desert air while, below, the rescuers sat in the mud, staring at the rock that had refused to let her go. The next question was unbearable. How to bring her out? Teams sketched recovery plans, speaking in low, urgent tones. They tried new angles with ropes, new drilling spots, new leverage points. But the passage was too tight, the rock too fragile. Every attempt risked collapse, threatening to trap more rescuers alongside her. For 24 more hours, they fought against the stone. Hope of saving her had vanished, but determination remained, to return her body to the surface, to give her family a chance to bury her properly. Yet each plan failed, the cave swallowing every effort. Rescuers' faces grew hollow, their bodies sagging with exhaustion. Finally, the decision was made. The danger was too great, the passage too unforgiving. Anna would remain where she had fallen, entombed within the cave that had claimed her. Her body could not be freed without sacrificing others. The cave was sealed. Concrete was poured into the entrance, closing off Nutty Putty forever. No one would crawl its passages again. Anna's tomb became permanent, her laughter and final words echoing in memory rather than stone. News spread across the country. Headlines spoke of the young woman trapped beneath the earth, of the rescue that became a vigil, of the cave now closed for eternity. Strangers mourned a life cut short, imagining the terror of her final hours. Her friends, who had entered laughing beside her, carried scars that words could never erase. For Jason, the sound of her voice whispering, "I can't breathe," would never leave his ears. Nutty Putty Cave became more than a location. It became a warning. And deep beneath Utah's desert, Anna remained, sealed in silence, part of the earth she had once dared to challenge. Nutty Putty Cave, once a popular destination for thrill-seekers, is now closed forever. Beneath the desert soil of Utah, Anna's body remains sealed within the stone, her final resting place marked not by a headstone, but by the very cave that claimed her. The decision to leave her there was not taken lightly, yet it became the only choice when every attempt at recovery proved impossible. For those who knew her, the site is more than a cave. It is a monument to risk, courage, and tragedy. Friends and family remember Anna not as a victim alone, but as a young woman who lived with curiosity, who laughed at fear, and who believed she could master the Earth's most difficult challenges. Her story, however, stands as proof of how fragile that confidence can be in the face of nature's indifference. Even today, cavers speak her name in hushed tones. Nutty Putty has become legend, its passages never to be touched again, but its warnings spreading far beyond Utah. Guides and rescuers cite her case as the ultimate example of how quickly an adventure can turn fatal. "The cave doesn't care how skilled you are," one rescuer later said. "It only cares how small the passage is and how much air you have left." The lesson is simple, yet brutal. Some places cannot be conquered, only respected. Tight squeezes, twisting passages, unseen dangers. These are not puzzles to be solved, but traps waiting to close on those who underestimate them. For Anna's family, the wound never truly closed. They live with the knowledge that she lies deep beneath the ground, unreachable, her laughter forever silenced. And yet, they also carry her memory as a reminder to live fully, even knowing how thin the line is between adventure and disaster. The cave remains silent now, its entrance buried in concrete, its name forever tied to one of the most disturbing incidents in modern caving history. What was once a destination is now a tomb, sealed not only to protect others, but to preserve the story of the young woman who never came back. Her final moments continue to echo in imagination, her voice straining, her breath shallow, her determination unbroken even as the stone refused to let go. She went into Nutty Putty Cave with courage, and in its depths, she became part of its history forever. Anna's story is not just about death underground. It is about the price of risk, the limits of human strength, and the silent power of the earth itself. And in the end, one truth remains. Nutty Putty Cave has not released her, and it never will. Follow this channel for more true cave stories, haunting, tragic, and unforgettable.